So we're going to move on now and have a quick look at some other ways that we've used mobile with some of our client organizations. Hopefully so far you've had a good snapshot of what the technology landscape is and the increasing importance of having a mobile capability. What I'll do now is share a few slides that describe mobile projects that we run with our clients, the different technologies we use and the different outputs that came from them. Before I do, we'll have another polling question. So really we're just going to ask, how has mobile been deployed in your organization? I'm sure it's been used for things that are not on this list, but I'd be interested to see what the split is in terms of the way you've used mobile in your organization. Okay, so 33% or 50% actually customer-facing. That's interesting. We have a customer-facing example. 43% just-in-time support, and then a smaller amount teaching new concepts, quizzes and assessments. And I'd say that that's an unsurprising result. I think one of the things that mobile is perhaps not so suited to is presenting completely new information. That's not to say it can't, but where its real strength lies is in that just-in-time support, and perhaps in providing quizzes, assessments, booster shots that will provide an update on a piece of learning that someone has already taken. And the customer-facing piece is fascinating as well. More and more organizations are using learning and games as a marketing tool to reach their customers, and mobile is perfect for that, of course. Thank you. Okay, so how is mobile learning being used in the workplace? Well, this is an interesting quote considering how recent it is. Even though some large organizations have started using mobile technology to empower their workforce, for most the question still remains, how do we actually use it in the workplace? Well, here are some examples. This is a piece of work we did for one of our clients, Walmart. The business need was to provide training to people who worked in the store, assistant managers. They wanted to negate the need to use up vital floor space with a computer. They also didn't want people to have to go back of store to take the training or to find out the just-in-time resources that they needed. The solution was a training program that was delivered on a Motorola Zoom tablet. It was built in HTML. It presented the learner with a floor plan of a Walmart store, so whichever area of the store they happened to be in, they could tap to go through into the content. The content provided them with standard operating procedures, videos, quizzes to help them check their understanding, and the all-important what does good look like piece, so they could take a look at an area of the store, very quickly identify if there was an issue that needed to be solved, and then pull up through their tablet some of the resources, top tips, expert opinion that would help them to resolve that issue with their team. Very successful. Managers and associates have just-in-time, just-in-place learning at their fingertips. It's an interesting solution because it was developed in HTML specifically for the Motorola Zoom. If you run it on a different tablet, it works kinda. You can see it, you can navigate through it, but it doesn't look quite right. So we learned from that experience that with that particular solution we put together, we would have to re-optimize it for every single device. Now, luckily, they only needed it for the Motorola Zoom. It wouldn't work if they suddenly said we need to have this on the iPad as well. Here's an example of a customer-facing piece. We put this together for AXA Insurance. It was one of a couple of programs, and these were delivered as apps for the iPhone. You can run them on the iPad too, although they expand a little. They're really optimized for the iPhone. This was to promote awareness of dangers in the home. It's a cross between a learning module and a game. It's a piece of marketing, essentially, and as a customer, you can enter this family's home, you can look in their different rooms, and you can identify the dangers they're in. So you might see a knife that's been left out on the chopping board, or a kettle with the cable a little too close to the floor, or an oven that's been left on, or a pan that's about to boil over. It's a great value add to the customers. It's fun, it's short, and it shows that AXA are engaging with the issues in their lives. It plays on the web, and it also plays on mobile devices, including iPad and Android tablets. So really, when you start pushing stuff out to the customer, you have to make some assumptions about the devices they're going to use to access the content, but the worst thing you can do is disappoint the customer. So we did have to make that a nice wide spread so that people would be able to see it on their devices. What we're looking at now is an example of some courseware we developed first in Flash. This is for Pfizer Animal Health. The courseware is designed for veterinary surgeons, people who have qualified as vets and who are now conducting their continuous education every year. It's a pay-per-view site. You can download training modules or training courses that come in a series of different modules. It's very media rich. We used Flash specifically when we began this project 2 years ago because we wanted the very richest animation and content. We then realized that we had to deliver it to iPad and iPad only as part of the offering. So we redesigned the courseware in HTML5. It was an uphill slog to get it to work. It does work. It's wonderful. But, as we mentioned earlier, because it's HTML5, it isn't backwards compatible onto most people's desktops. So with this example, we're actually running and supporting two different versions, a Flash version and an HTML5 version. And in fact, right now, we're looking at potentially migrating this into a different technology because we've ended up with two platforms to support, which isn't ideal. But it is a good example of what you can do with HTML5. If you put enough effort into it, you can replicate almost everything that Flash can do. And it's very successful. This solution is HTML-based. It was built in Lectora. It was designed for very low bandwidths. It's been built to run on a PC and an iPad. It's to reach associates in corporate headquarters, but also on-site at airports and other locations, so people who are moving around an airport and perhaps going into areas that don't have great connectivity. The content's very engaging. Because it's built in basic HTML, you take a little bit of a hit on the interactivity, but not on the visuals and not on the instructional design. So the experience is great, but the interactions are perhaps not so fluid and the animation's not so smooth as you would see in Flash or HTML5. It's very engaging, it's interactive, and what it lacks in the Flash, it makes up for in portability, and it's very, very efficient as well. The last solution we'll show is a learning center. So this is a combination of an app and streamed content. It's a player, essentially, that sits on your device. This is designed to sit on the iPad. And then within the player, we can stream content down. The advantage of this is that the Learning Center app sits on the device and can be run offline. So if you've streamed content down to it, you can then look at that content on the plane or on the subway. Every time you reconnect, it will alert you to any updates, just as any app would, and it will automatically pull down those updates into the content. So it plays learning content. It can also be used to facilitate classroom sessions. And it really shows that the organization is ahead of the curve. It's equipping people with a self-updating learning center, which new content can be pushed down to. And it's probably too small for you to see here, but on the interface, they can also access latest company news and other bits and pieces. So it starts to become a hub that they would access at least once a day to find out what's going on and to see what's new. Okay, so something else which we'll leave you the link for and you may want to take a look at. We gave this presentation at Maisie, or a version of it, towards the end of last year. And around that time, we put together a short piece of HTML content which we called 5 Things We Learned About Mobile Learning. The link's up there if you'd like to write that down. It works, I think, best on the iPad. I think you can see it on the desktop, but it isn't optimized for desktop. It's really for iPad delivery. And it allows you to go in and just find out what we learned about these 5 key areas. So we've learned about mobile being just-in-place training, about the difference between the app and the browser in terms of development costs, but also in terms of user experience. Defining what we mean by tablet. Do we think tablets are being used as a big smartphone or a small laptop? Do I use my iPad or receive content on my iPad the same way I will with a laptop? What's the amount of time I could comfortably sit with an iPad and absorb content compared to a smartphone? It looks a little bit about where mobile fits in as part of the training brand. I mean, this presentation isn't focusing so much on instructional design. I think that's another webinar to be had in the future. But we've done a little bit of thinking about where mobile sits as part of the blend. And finally, the warning: prepare for integration issues. Whatever you're doing, whichever of these solutions you're attempting to implement, we're still, and all organizations, and particularly learning management systems, are in the early days of integration. And we're still coming across the roadblocks and the issues that we need to get over.